What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to be talking about KFC and kind of the things, or X-Transbots, one of the things that's been happening with them in regards to reveals, stuff they got coming out. There's just some things I want to talk about in regard to that. Some weird moves being made, some that are interesting, some that are less than, but at least something to talk about. I also think the position that they find themselves in these days is one to take note of and one to take interest in from a G1 masterpiece toy collector. But before we do that, we got to get into some house cleaning. So I told you that I did another Sit Down Saturday last week, and this is the part that's new. So I cut in, I got a new shirt, and then we'll cut back and you'll see that I'm back in my old shirt for the rest of it. Look, I don't want to waste too much more of your time. Couple house cleaning issues. One, the Sit Down Saturday from last week. Honestly, most people weren't even in that same kind of BS pocket. There was a gentleman on there that said he thinks it's harsh that I wouldn't understand how people would expect their Transformers to transform. Once again, it's not what I said. What I said was just because it doesn't transform doesn't make it not a Transformer by brand. Like, that's what the name of the brand is. And then he said, but the rest of his argument still stood, but he was incorrect. And that's no disrespect to that gentleman, but I agree with a lot of your points in your argument, but it doesn't change. That's a Transformer. That's a Ravage statue, and that's a Transformer. It doesn't transform, but that's what it is. That's what it is. If you were to make this and put it out, you would get a cease and desist from a brand that said Hasbro Transformers. So then you're impeding on it. Transfer, that's what that is. Enough on that. Two more things. One piece of merch for the week. I have coasters. They come in a pack of 4. Once again, it's all my art. And once again, a portion of all of the sales from DMH goes towards a gentleman that passed away of cancer this year that was a public servant. So get in touch with me if you would like a set of 4. We have them in different sets: Combiners, Autobot leaders, Decepticon leaders, even some stuff outside of that. So get in touch with me if you'd like a set. My email, all that stuff is always in the description. Lastly, and I hate that we're even having this conversation, but a gentleman from the community passed away this past week. He was a dear friend of mine. I had just texted him or spoke to him via text days before his passing, and that is New York Mike. To have known him was to love him. Super nice guy. It's unfortunate, or I guess I should say, I feel more sorry for those of you who did not have the opportunity to meet him than you should feel sorry for me for losing him. We are raising money for his son. If you contact me, I will give you the PayPal to his wife to take the donations directly. We will also be selling his collection. I will help do that here, and anybody that lives in the New York area that would like to help with that, please get in contact with me, and I will talk to you and see if you would be a good candidate to do so, and we will add you to the list of people. A true loss. Skullfest won't be the same, but somebody at Skullfest is going to have to pick up fresh Philly pretzels, Amish butter, and those fancy donuts, because it just won't be the same without him or without the things he used to bring that were kind of his signature. I love you, Mike. We're going to have a moment of silence. And with that, let's get back to the show. Alright, so let's get into this X-Transbot situation. So X-Transbots has had a very interesting history, and I have done the past, present, and future on them, I believe, so feel free to check that out for sort of my detailed thoughts regarding them in their history. But one thing I want to talk about in regard to this discussion is how many reveals they've had that haven't come to fruition, right? So we've had a Springer, we've had a Cup, we've had an Inferno. I think we all understand why all 3 of those kind of didn't come to light. They were competing against heavy hitters. The Springer was competing with MMC and Fans Toys. The Cup was competing with Fans Toys, and the Inferno was competing with everyone. And then they've been kind of focusing on the Stunticon set, and they had that little situation where the Stunticons were in danger of being KO'd for a second, and Keith kind of smashed that with a low price for his Stunticons, which appeased the market and kind of put them way ahead of the trajectory in regard to the Stunticon competitors because they were affordable, they were nicely done, well made, well painted, etc. And we have gotten all 5, but we're waiting on a trailer in order to complete the set for Menasor. We've also got G2 repaints. We've also got G1 toy retools. They've definitely cashed in on that. And no shame in that game. They put out the proper ones that most people wanted first, and then they are doing the others for kind of niche markets. Like, I'm good with that. My issue is when they go the opposite way, right? Like, we've seen companies like Mastermind Creations, for instance, put out the less desired mold first to kind of get people on board to buy it just to try out a new mold, and then release the mold that people actually want later on. That's the kind of stuff that turns me off. This is the inverse of that. They put out the stuff that most people wanted straight away. They undercut the KO price. They killed the KO, basically, in doing so, and then they put out the more niche ones, repaints and retools, etc., in order to kind of double down and appease the niche market at the same time. So no love lost. But we're all kind of waiting for this Motor Master trailer, right? Because everybody's chomping at the bit to try out the combine mode. And we're getting a lot of teases and such, social media rumblings, that we're going to get some reveals for that soon. However, we had the Bud Ice virus strike, right? And while the Bud Ice was here, it kind of put a cramp on everything. And I think we're all still feeling that a bit, especially on the receiving end, right? Speaking of which, Maryland was under double digits in deaths this week. So that's awesome. I'm very proud of my state here recently. But no story for another day. But every company has kind of been quiet, right? So we haven't really expected anything. But we did get a number of reveals from them recently that don't seem as though they would take too much effort to produce, right? The Autobot Spike, the Quintesson stuff. I'm not really interested in any of that, but that's what we've gotten. So it's been quiet. We expect them to be quiet. We've had these reveals. We expect that some of that product is coming. And then we get some rumbling on their social media. And the rumbling suggests that they got big reveals coming, right? And the big reveals came. Now look, I want to get this right out of the way. I like X-Transbots. I often call X-Transbots Keith because it's part of the KFC conglomerate and he's at the top of it, I would assume, so I just speak in short language that way. I like them. I'm going to talk about the position that they're in at the end of this video, but I just want to set that in as a disclaimer before I go in on these reveals. I also want to say that I think these reveals look good, generally and objectively. But these reveals, after such a long hiatus, after such a quiet storm of events for 2020, and after a long-awaited need to try to get the trailer for Motormaster, these reveals, in my opinion, are the worst thing that happened to KFC since the Popeye's chicken sandwich. You're an idiot. There's a word that we're going to come back to a few times throughout this, but what they're missing here, in my opinion, is excitement. Now, they're able to double down a bit because people are starving, people want to be fed product because it's been so dry out there, with the exception of Fans Toys, that people are chomping at the bit to get something. So in that way, it does scratch that itch, but this is how you come back after such a quiet time, after such a drought of events, and you come back with a repaint of a mold that's very old, and then you have to provide an updated video on how to get the feet right, because they were a pain in the balls. And then you finally show off the Junkions that you revealed years before. When you revealed the initial two, you revealed all of them. And now you're getting them out and it's like cool. Like, it's cool that they're coming. And I'm getting 2 of them. And I'm going to review all of them. I'm going to show you all of them. And I think they look great and I think they look cool. I think the Scourge looks great. It's painted beautifully. You know I'm a sucker for stuff like that. And it's done tremendously. Now, when I got my first one, it was covered in some sort of mystery white powdery substance. I'm not sure it was personal, but I took it as such. That being said, I'm hoping that this doesn't come the same way. However, I can look at this and say, wow, beautiful, beautiful sculpt, beautiful, beautiful paint, stunning, etc., etc., and also say, it's not exciting because it's a mold from years ago. Now, if this was something that was peppered in and sprinkled in throughout the mix, it's not like it would cause any uproar because it would be like a bonus. But because this is how we're coming back, it does seem a little lackluster. Now, I've heard rumors, and I've talked about it a little bit on Patreon, about stuff that I've heard coming from KFC or X-Transbots, and some of that stuff is exciting. Some of it isn't, but some of it is. And I think had they dropped some of that stuff, it would have really been a gift back. This isn't supposed to be any sort of really deep or meaningful discussion, honestly. It's just something I wanted to talk about because while I try to keep everybody kind of up to date on what's going on out there and challenge people to think about certain things and culturally address some of the issues that the community and the kind of hobby itself faces, I also like to take a minute and say, man, I just want to talk about this stuff because I'm a fan too. The Scourge is great for the people that didn't get it originally. They had a hard time selling that 3-pack back in the day. I hope they don't have the same problems now, but they had a problem then. But it is an older mold with an update, right? Beautiful update, not exciting. And then we get the Junkions. Now the Junkions are a bit more because they fill a different void, so to speak. So I'm in for 2 of them, and I would get all of them if I had the space, but honestly, it's just a matter of logistics at this point, and I think that having 4 Junkions total is probably more than enough. But once again, those are well-built things, they're well-sculpted things, and with the retooling here, it's very kind of similar to me in the same respects that their Stunticon G1 toys are done, where you've taken something that's already pretty good, and you've put the proper tender loving care into it in order to make it kind of unique and original to scratch an itch. But for all of this kind of R&D expenses that we're saving here, like, show me the money too, you know? Show me the money. Let's see the trailer. Now, my luck, I'm recording this on Wednesday. My luck, the trailer will have been revealed on Friday, and then you guys will tell me in 30 different comments how it's already been revealed. But it just seems like to come back after this lull, you want to come heavy, so to speak. You really really want to drive it home that you're here to make an impact. And I'm not sure that you're doing that with facelifts on old molds. Good looking facelifts. You're not out here looking like Little Kim, but facelifts nonetheless. Now, let's transition into the third part of this, which is the position that X-Transbots is in. X-Transbots is really the only major competitor that Fans Toys has anymore, in my opinion. Now, you can make the argument that they're the only competitor in the third-party world, and I would agree with that for sure, but you could also make the argument that Takara is not even really in the scenario anymore. They're the only real competitor that Fans Toys has. Now, one of the things that we've talked about on this channel a lot is that if you work with me, not against me, we can be much more successful. Now, that's not me personally, but these companies. Rather than cannibalizing one another, kind of pick and choose the battles and move appropriately. There's a lot of room out here to get some stuff done, and you only got 2 major companies contributing now. If X-Transbots were to take that ball, they could get straight down the court with it if they wanted to. But you're not going to get straight down the court with it with facelifts and Quintesson. That's not what's going to put you in that upper tier of conversation. That's not what's going to leave a legacy, especially when there's huge gaps out there that need production. I find it ironic how the tables have turned over time, where I feel like I didn't believe in KFC or X-Transbots, and they kind of believed in themselves and made the appropriate kind of changes and everything and evolved into something that now I feel like I believe in more than they do. X-Transbots has the potential to be one of the greatest third-party companies of all time if they seize the day and create the supply that meets the demand. I think a lot of their choices as of recent have been bizarre for the position that they are in right now, and I'm not sure that they realize that position. And that's how I feel as a fan. As a fan, I feel like this is a company that is in the upper tier, that is making genre-wise the toy that I want in regard to Transformers. They're just not making the pieces I want. Now, that's not a blanket statement, right? Because I want their Stunticons and everything else, but it's a kind of general statement. Autobot X, I mean, cool, you know, cool niche thing, but like, let whatever joke of a company pops up here and there make something like that. Remember that company that was going to make those drones on Cybertron on a Kita Vector Sigma thing? Let them do that. Let somebody else do that. You're better than that. I feel the same way about the Quintessons. Now, it's an easy cash grab, right? Simple mold, simple sculpt, and we know that Keith is business-minded, so a lot of this kind of cash grab stuff is kind of par for the course. I just wish it was peppered in as opposed to being the main course. It's not unlike the conversation I just had yesterday about the Vintage Collection. The original trilogy is the bread and butter of the Vintage Collection. Make it the bread and butter, sprinkle in the prequels, sequels, and spin-offs. It's the same thing here. We know what the core cast of characters are, and we still have holes there, so why are we playing around with Autobot X? I don't need Michelangelo to draw Scooby-Doo. I need Michelangelo to do the Sistine Chapel. Now, I'm not comparing Keith to Michelangelo, but I'm trying to give an example of where I hold them. I hold them in a higher regard than the product they're producing, but I believe in them. I think they're in a good place, and I'd like to see them do something more. What if they had come out with reveals for Protectobots and Sandstorm? How does that day feel versus the day that we got? Now, we're starving, and that Scourge and those sweeps look good to you. I know, they look good to me too. But when you're starving, you'll eat anything. But imagine how it would have felt to see, boom, here comes your Groove and First Aid, get ready for our Protectobot set, and Sandstorm's coming next. That day feels different. I've talked about it a number of times here, but one of the things that's missing from third party these days is the excitement. We are addicts of this stuff. They know it, we know it. Most of us have come to terms with it. Most of us have told our parents, they've been very supportive. Do you know what happens when an addict doesn't get what they're addicted to? They detox. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, until next time, take care.